Okay, hi everyone. Welcome to my mobile session replay talk. I'm Jasmin, and I've been a product manager at Sentry for the last 4 years. I'm based in our Toronto office, so just a short flight away from New York City. By a show of hands, who has heard of Sentry before? Okay, it looks like at least half of you have heard of Sentry before. That's good. So our main goal is ultimately to help you ship with confidence. And we want to surface any user-facing problem. So whether it is a code exception, a slowdown, or even a usability issue, we want to bubble up and give you all the context that you need to solve this problem. Studies actually show that 53% of users will abandon your app if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. So we want to prevent these negative outcomes and protect your app's critical experiences. So you need the right tools in your toolkit to get alerted to and to fix these issues quickly. So what is the workflow that we suggest? We want to give you all the context that you need to solve your issues. So you'll get an alert to a new issue, and we'll provide you with an issue summary that is rich in context. So for example, we have tracing, and tracing will connect your front-end mobile application to the back-end APIs it relies on. We also have session replay, and this is a reproduction of a user session, and this is going to be the focus of my talk, so I will go into more details shortly. And lastly, we have profiling, and this gives you code-level visibility into what is causing performance bottlenecks. All of this context helps you to root cause the problem, to find and fix bugs within a matter of minutes rather than hours or days. So what is a session replay? Session replay allows you to see reproductions of real user sessions in production, which could help you understand what was happening before, during, and even after a problem occurred. So as you play back each session, you'll be able to see every user interaction in relation to what was happening behind the scenes. So you can see, as the replay video is going, the network requests, the front end and back end spans, and more. So when it comes to platform support at Sentry, 2.5 years ago, we launched Session Replay for web, and at the beginning of this year, we launched Session Replay for mobile. And our support includes Android, of course, iOS, React Native, and Flutter. So how does this actually work under the hood? It works by taking snapshots of the view hierarchy as well as a screenshot within the same frame at a rate of 1 frame per second. These screenshots are then compressed into a video file representing a segment of the user session, and there are multiple segments that comprise the replay. So it's not quite the same as a traditional video recording, but it is still incredibly powerful for debugging. I like to think of it as a stop-motion animation. So one thing I want to call out that is a unique aspect of the replay product is our privacy focus. We care a lot about user privacy, so by default, we actually mask all text and images before the replay even gets sent from the user's device. And how we do this is we use the view hierarchy to find the position of controls such as text boxes, images, labels, buttons, and we draw a block over these controls, and we use the most predominant color. So those are like the squares and rectangles that you see on the screen. So you get a sense of where you are in your application, what screen you might be viewing, without revealing any sensitive information. However, with custom masking options, you can choose to actually unmask certain controls. So I'm going to address performance overhead up front, and this is by far one of our most asked about questions when it comes to replay. So for most mobile applications, the performance overhead of our Session Replay SDK will be imperceptible to end users. And we actually have different approaches that we do to optimize the performance. So for example, we minimize CPU and memory usage by recording screenshots and that snapshot of the view hierarchy only when necessary. So we only take screenshots when something actually changes on the screen. We also offer ways if you want to reduce your performance overhead even further. So you can choose to change the replay quality if you're okay sacrificing that. And you could also disable replays for low-end devices very easily. And we even went one step further and actually quantified the performance overhead of our SDK using an open source app called Pocket Casts. And this has hundreds of thousands of users in production, over 1 million downloads on the Google Play Store. And as you can see, there is an impact on CPU because we do need to generate and encode a video. And there's an impact on memory because we need to store and keep track of bitmaps. However, with that being said, the performance overhead of the Replay SDK should not be noticeable to end users. So let's jump into a demo. I have a demo Android app, and it's called Empower Plant. And it's basically an e-commerce app where you can buy expensive plants and plant accessories. So let's take a look. So here we have a user on my app. They've launched it, and they're browsing the list page. They're adding a few items to the cart, and they're interested in this plant stroller at an affordable price of $250. They're adding a couple of those. They're also interested in the plant nodes. They add a couple of those. Now they're going to check out with the button in the top right, and it looks like the checkout has failed, which is a really poor user experience. And not to mention, as a business owner, I don't make any sales either. So from the business perspective, it is also not a good experience. Luckily, I've instrumented Sentry on my application, and I got alerted to a new issue regarding that checkout. So let me go ahead and take a look at everything Sentry is telling me. Okay, here we have the Sentry issues report. I'm just gonna zoom in a little bit so it's easier to see. Right away, we've identified that it was a 500 response status code at the checkout. I'm able to see that this has happened 53 different times across 34 unique users, so I get a sense of the breadth of this issue. I also have tags, and what this is aggregate insights across all the events in this issue. So I can see that this issue exclusively happens in release 24.12.26, which indicates to me that it was probably introduced in this release. And if I scroll down, I do have a stack trace, and I can see that my HTTP request had failed, but I'm really lacking information as to why that happened, how the user got into that state. But luckily, I do have replays installed, and there's actually one embedded on this issue. So I'm going to jump into the full replay view. So the replay view is really two components. You have that video playback I was talking about, and then you also have all this lovely debugging context that is in sync with the replay video. So the timeline will show me these red dots. These are the error events that occurred. At 41 seconds, here's my 500. And I actually have a cluster of error events right on this timeline, which indicates to me, this is a real hot spot for this user session. And all of these dots on the timeline, as you can see, are color-coded, and they actually correlate to all of these different breadcrumb events. So it makes it really easy to jump to relevant parts of the replay video. So I'm going to go ahead and watch what was happening leading up to that error. So I could see the users on the list page, and they made a few clicks on the user tap button, 2 to be exact, and immediately after the error was thrown. So I'm able to see the exact repro steps leading up to this problem, as well as the user impact. The user was not able to check out, and 2, they were prompted with a dialog box to actually write in feedback. So now I want to get into all of the other debugging contexts that we're collecting alongside the replay. So the first is the breadcrumbs list. This is essentially a summary of key user actions and other key events that happen in the replay. And this is incredibly helpful. If your replay is fully masked, you can verify exactly what screen somebody was on, exactly what taps were made, because all of that data is here. There is a couple mobile device-specific breadcrumbs that I want to highlight. The first is device battery. In this case, it was 100% so we don't need to worry about it for this user session. But when the device battery is low, of course, it could impact your app, and it could slow it down because the operating system has reduced resource usage. So it's important for troubleshooting performance problems to know if the battery was low. Another thing we collect is when the app is in the foreground and the app is in the background. And this is helpful for when errors are actually occurring in the background. You'll be able to detect that, and you'll also be able to understand why there might be gaps in the user timeline. Maybe it's because the user left your app and then came back after a few minutes. There are a couple other breadcrumbs that are not in this user session, but I did want to highlight. One is network connectivity, and what that is, it'll show you if the user was connected to data or Wi-Fi, and this is important for like slow network response issues or for web vitals such as time to full display. And we also have another breadcrumb that is called basically orientation change. So you'll know if a user goes from portrait to landscape or vice versa, and this is important for any config or layout related issues. In addition to the breadcrumbs, we have logs. As you see, everything is time-stamped. We also have the network requests. And right here at the 41-second mark, I could see my 500 again highlighted in red. We have a short list of all the errors, and we also have the trace. So what the trace will do, assuming it loads in fully, and yes, it has, it will show you how the front end connects to the back end with all of Sentry's telemetry. So here I can see that my HTTP checkout span had errored, but connected to that, there's actually an error in my back end endpoint. So if I expand this span, I'll give it a few seconds to load. You can see that here is an exception, not enough inventory for a product. So I'm going to jump in to that back-end exception. So right away with the stack trace, I'm able to see where in the back-end code base this issue was raised. So now that front-end customer impacting problem on Android, I was able to trace it back to somewhere in a completely different system. On top of that, if I was the back-end team receiving this Flask error and I didn't have enough context to know, where was it coming from, where was the request made, I'm actually able to see the replay embedded here. So I know which Android app, which screen the user was on, etc., even if I'm lacking context because I don't work on the app directly. In addition to that, we also provide an AI-backed solution called Seer. And what this will do is it'll take context on your code base, as well as all of the Sentry telemetry we're collecting, to actually identify a root cause for you. In addition, it will actually suggest a potential solution, and it will even go as far as raising a pull request for you to review, and that speeds up your issue resolution process even that much more. So jumping back to the replay, there's one last thing I wanted to highlight, and that is the tags. It's essentially metadata on the user session. As you know, different issues can impact certain devices more than others. So I could see the device model, I see what operating system of Android it was on, and if I have a suspicion that a certain group of my users are being impacted, say I think this problem is related to my US user base, if I click in, it will actually filter the replay list down to everybody who is part of the US user base. So as you could see with replay, we were able to reproduce the user session, able to understand how the repro steps that were there, as well as the user impact. And with Seer, we were also able to identify the root cause as well as suggest a fix. And I'm short on time, so I'm going to skip ahead to basically the end. If you'd like to try out Sentry, if you're not a customer yet, you can scan the QR code. Just make sure to enter the promo code droidcon 2025. With that being said, thank you all for listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to join me at the booth. Thank you.